It's a Day of the Dead altar.
Is Georgia marble, and we have cleaned it and tuck pointed it and maintained them over the years. But this mausoleum is insured for $1.5 million at this point, and we do have those checked periodically for value, and it is up to the cemetery to maintain those over the years. I'd like for each one of you to come through the center of the mausoleum with me as I read the history, because the tombs are in the floor. The crypt covers were taken off and put back on as we made the burial, but they're lined in lead. And so if you want to follow me inside, I'll read you the history. Nominated and inaugurated the 4th Governor of Ohio, where he served two-year terms during his 1896-1900. Wife Ellen Ludlow married September 17, 1857, and 3 children to their union. The Bushnell built the Richardson Romanesque Bushnell Laser Company, which become one of the 4 companies merged from International Harvester. Now it's still part of the National Register of Historic Places and currently resides at the funeral home of Richard Gladfelter Dunbar. This mausoleum is the final resting place of the Bushnell family, members of 6.
Probably on the Parthenon in Greece, and these are Tuscan columns. Up there is, that's what's called an antiphyx. It's just an architectural element, but the bottom part of it, is a canvas tree. So we're going to be going down this way, and I'm sure one of you biblical scholars can quote in the Bible or the New Testament when Jesus says, "I am the beginning and the end." But you've heard that phrase, "I am the beginning and the end." So that's what this is, the Alpha and Omega, the first and the last letters of the Greek alphabet. Over here, you have an XP, and that's Jesus' name, Christos, in Greek. That's X, right? That's the first 2 letters of it. And that was one of the very, very early Christian symbols. If you go in the catacombs or something in Rome, you see those sort of things. You see the Kiro cross. So we're just getting to the point here where the nighttime tour is starting. So it's going to get a little dark. But I've seen the original sarcophagus. It's actually in the Vatican Museum in Rome. But sarcophagus are originally intended to hold a body. And nowadays, if you see a sarcophagus in a cemetery, it's most likely that the body is buried underneath, but it's more of a decorative thing. The word sarcophaguses were usually made out of something called Assyrian limestone.
Oddfellows, friendship, love, truth.
This flower blooms in the early evening. Who said that? Okay, you get a nickel. Okay, that's the evening primrose, probably the centermost plot here in Ferncliff Cemetery. The Grand Army of the Republic was a very, very, very powerful organization. As a matter of fact, you basically had to have their endorsement to be elected president of the United States during their heyday, which was from after the Civil War until 1900 or so. Of course, their members started dying off, and so it was what you would call a self-extinguishing organization, because you had to be a veteran of the Civil War. Now, another example of women being smarter than men, there is a female auxiliary to the Grand Army of the Republic, and it's called the Women's Relief Corps. And you only had to have a relative in the Civil War. So they're still around. That's kind of like the DAR, so we pointed out the DAR before. So the GAR is no more. The last encampment was in 1947, I believe, and the last member, a guy named Alfred Woolson, I believe he died in 1953, at the age of 100, a little over 100. So they don't exist anymore, but any large cemetery like this historic cemetery, you're going to find GAR markers.
Sisters, my brothers, welcome this evening. It's cool to introduce myself. I'm Elizabeth Daniel Stewart. I founded the Ohio Temperance Society here in Springfield, Ohio. I also founded the Women's Christian Temperance Union in Osborne, Ohio. Tell you a little bit about me. I was born in 1816. My mother died when I was 3. I was orphaned by my father, James Daniel, when I was 12. I taught and attended seminary schools in Granville. By 16, I had decided to make the Methodist religion my profession. In 1848, I married Hiram Stewart. We never were able to have a child past infancy. However, he had 2 boys who I claimed as my own. The reason that this is important, the 3 of them went off to the Civil War, where then I took supplies to the hospital and to the front, where I earned my most proud moniker of Mother Stewart from the Boys in Blue. Now, there are several things that we're very proud of with our temperance union. We had 600 women petition the city of Springfield's chamber to close and not sell alcohol within the corporation on the Sabbath. We marched through 130 communities. However, I'd like to tell you a little story about all of this. One day I received a letter from a woman asking me to come to her home to watch the throngs of men as they walked behind the church, Episcopal Church, on High and Central. Her house was on High Street. They took the alley between her house to Stubbs Saloon, which was on Main Street. I went over and watched this for an hour and finally said, if I had a disguise, I would go in there and do something about this. I asked her, and she gave me a cloak. I pulled it down over my head and went in. My intention was to grab a glass while no one was paying attention. However, I wasn't sure. I don't know alcohol. I don't know what's in those glasses. So I decided I have to call for something myself. Now, not knowing alcohol, I did not know what to order. So I ordered a sherry. He brought a bottle and 2 glasses. One had some bit of water in it. I take this as not being straight as the men might take it. However, wanting to prove that he was doing this, serving alcohol for consumption on the Sabbath, and that you can take it with you, I wanted to make him really, that it was proved to him to doing this. So I asked him to pour me a drink. I also did not know how much a drink amount was. So I asked him how much it was. It was a dime. I gave him my dime. I grabbed my drink and I went out the door, sealed it and used it later. Now, if the minister had been at his pulpit, if it were not for the stained glass, he would have seen all these men going through. They were that close. The church stains the glass so that we cannot see out. These men, these evil men, these drunkards, stain their glass so we cannot see in. It was while that my sons were at the front that's when I determined that drink is the evil that causes all men to fail. It is the worst. It is the Satan's brew. It has now come to my attention there is a certain establishment in my town that bears my name. I've been at rest for over 100 years. I'm here to lead the crusade. Shall we go?
The anchor is also known as the crux dissimulata, and that's because the Christians, in order to not be discovered who they were back in the early days, would take a cross and then put a curve on the bottom to make it look like an anchor. So that showed other Christians, where they were going to be meeting, but they didn't want the cross to be there because it was just too obvious. So you'll see it. You'll see kind of a funny looking egg. On the other side, I'll take you into a tent, and they have a skull and some sulfur and some things like that. It's just tents are very symbolic of a place that you go to reflect. And once again, you'll see the FLT, Friendship, Love, and Truth.
And this granite here, when they quarry it, it's in big blocks, and then they set it down, put it in piece by piece, and it's really interesting. William S. Gladfelter was born on a farm near Little York, Pennsylvania, March 10th, 1841. Hart County history would not be complete without the mention of William, who arrived in Springfield in 1866. William became one of the city leaders, carpenters, and contractors. He constructed over 700 homes throughout Springfield. In 1892, William constructed his last residence at 1618 West North Street. Is anybody familiar with that address here in town? 618 West North Street, where he and his wife remained until his death. William died in February of 1907 at his son in Baltimore, Maryland. His wife followed, passing away in January of 1908, also his son's home in Maryland. They rest in peace with their 5 other family members inside the mausoleum known as the Gladfelter Mausoleum: Catherine, John, Rayburn, Mabel, Catherine, and William S. Gladfelter. It's a really neat interior. Just take your time to go through it one by one and admire the inside of the family. Some families put these names on the crypt, and some do not, but it's in record on file at the cemetery office. So some of them did put names on, some didn't. This is their personal vault. So some would do that, some didn't. Last resident.
Sounds empty.
At 1618 West.
I think he left.
There we go. Got it? Really? I know you're not a young person, but now I want to take a picture. Stan's going to give a history of this. Come on, get a bunch of people. Actually, Stan could be.
Founders of R&M. These are more dry and not as goopy as I thought they would be.
Here's the bench.
So this is must smell. Founders of R&M.
Oh, it's from the top.
Broken stones from the top there. Got marble. It's got a thing up there. On the ceiling. Oh, it's holding the stones up, I'm sure.
Or certainly hadn't developed very fully the arch for strength. So they got their strength from tapering the sides of their architecture. So these are slanted at a 70-degree angle to give it strength. Of course, the pyramids, they're slanted even more than that, but that's how they get their strength. The other is at the top of this is what is called a cavetto cornice.
Lee, and I don't know what his connection to Springfield is. So there's a road named after him too. That's yes. For the airport.
All right, thank you.
That's like the sun.
Mausoleum, go ahead and take turns going inside now. Visit Springfield Brewery. Just got an iron gate truck of the local fire department.
That's very easy.
That's
It's very counter-sonic.
Springfield Savings.
Wow.
Remember the park board? He's white.
Look, it's
White,
the gold is.
One,
Yeah.
zero,
gold is
two,
bled off.
High Street throughout the remaining years. William died
Anybody in there?
years of March 5th, 1917, and short illness, Asia
Got an empty one.
and the mausoleum. Only two buried in the Blee Mausoleum. Wayne, called the farm and the fireside. It had circulation over 200,000 to farmers throughout the
I
Midwest.
like this recessed drive they got going. This little embankment. Some urns there. Nice shiny columns.
Laurel wreath. Laurel is always been a symbol of victory. So
Going into the Mast.
you think about like the Roman times, some people wear laurel wreath. This is this type of rough stone is called
Oh, white brick. Old handle. Oh, it's painted brick, not white brick.
Yeah, look,
It's glazed.
got some damage going on there.
Yeah.
There's a spider.
It does look like a drain, doesn't it? It's probably a vent. I'll go with vent. Loomis is the dog? Could be a hired hand or a slave. What years are we looking at?
1900s, I doubt it. But maybe.
Well, there's 1865 or 67.
This one's creepy. This one's kind of creepy.
I saw doing the ghost town stuff, but they tore down the building that my store was in.
And that was downtown, wasn't it? I remember somebody talking about it when I wasn't real sure where it was.
It was right next to St. John's, between St. John's and Cole College building, and they tore it down.
Limestone deposits on the brick. And again, some corrosion.
We're standing in front of the Baldwin Mausoleum. Before we actually talk about that, one of the things that Doug has been doing is talking about some symbolization on monuments. So it's kind of like a side note to mausoleum. One thing that is demonstrated on symbolization is talking about sorrow. And that's shown in different ways. Sometimes you'll talk about, or you'll see angels have their wings tucked in and their heads bowed, things like that, in a sorrowful way, and things like that. And sometimes you'll see a willow tree on a monument. And just about in every occasion that I've seen, when you see that, that means a weeping willow, which demonstrates sorrow. There was one particular instance where there was a person who was interested in the willow tree in the time of death as something that would not represent sorrow, but would represent comfort. And that was Paul Lawrence Dunbar, who was a famous African-American poet, wrote many, many poems. His most famous of all was the Death Song. In his history of many that he did, this became the one that he was most well known for. Now, he was only 33 years old when he passed away. And he's actually laid to rest not far from here over in Dayton. and he is laid to rest under a willow tree. And it is very fitting because even his marker that marks his grave has the death song that he wrote. And so what we did was, because we don't have a willow tree right here, we did get some branches and just kind of brought it to this location, try to make it real to us just a little bit. I wanted to just recite this death song poem by Paul Lawrence Dunbar and try to attempt the black southern dialect that he wrote it in. He didn't speak this way, but when he wrote his poetry, he did it in a way similar to this. So it goes like this. Lay me down beneath the willers in the grass, where the branches go singing as it pass. And as eyes are laying low, I can hear it as I go, singing sleep, my honey, take your rest at last.
Great.
That's all I have to say.
This is the Bookwalter Mausoleum, and I'll give you a little history about we had a little bit of trouble with this mausoleum several years ago. We had a big ash tree out front, and a big limb come down on top of it, and we had some roof structure damage. We had the roof fixed, and then the ventals on top. To replace those because they had to be hand tooled and put back on, so it took them a year to fix them. So some of these mausoleums can't be still repaired by mechanical devices. They have to be hand tooled with sculpture. So some they have to be hand carved again and put back onto this mausoleum. It took them a year to do that. The John Bookwalter was born in Indiana on September 26, 1837. John worked on a farmhouse and mill operations until 1865, where he became Springfield to investigate the muffled water wheel and improve the power device being manufactured and tracked other businesses. He became interested in the water wheel as well as the daughter of Mr. Leffel. John and Eliza Jane Leffel was married June 29, 1865, and the same year joined his father-in-law in business. James Leffel died the next year, leaving John to reorganize the water wheel company under the name of James Leffel Company. In 1868, the Champion Hotel Company was organized, and John also was one of the board directors. Within a short time, the donation of the firm was individually reached $100,000 to be used to build the hotel. Other buildings erected in Springfield by his interest: James Leffel Company Factory, Land Opera Hotel, the Bookwalter Hotel. On April 18, 1879, Eliza died. By the time John had become known as the distinguished traveler, accumulating land in Kansas and Nebraska to the extent of 60,000 acres.
So there's still 1, 2, 3, 4 crypts left in this one, 5, 6. So there's a lot still left in this one.
1881, John.
Well,
this one was put in 1995, so there must still be family. Where's her 19 right there? Oh, I couldn't even see the writing on that one. Mary. 1952.
1979.
What date?
1979.
I got 8 people in here, they can.
It's about 140 years old.
Funny, because they put with this one.
7 more spaces.
More damage too.
Oh, yeah,
This was flush at one point.
I'm sure. I doubt they constructed it crooked.
Verticality. You know, it's Christian architecture, it's inching towards the heavens. You know, it has a very, very uplifted look to it. The vent basically is what's called a trefoil, and it's a symbol of the Trinity. I am not really sure what we have up here. I wouldn't doubt if there's some acanthus leaves. There's certainly acanthus leaves down here. Floral motifs, but up at the top, see right at the very top, that's a pine cone. And that is a symbol of immortality because pine trees are evergreen, and also incorruptibility. As anybody that's ever had to handle pine sap knows, it's pretty incorruptible stuff. Again, these are acanthus leaves, Corinthian composite columns. The little swirls you see right here are ionic, and they're thought to be kind of a feminine architectural style. It's softer, and it's supposed to be kind of like pearls right here. So that's Gothic architecture. One of the problems with Gothic architecture, especially in cemeteries, is because of all these little nooks and crannies and crevices, it becomes a magnet for ivy and all sorts of things. So it's a real maintenance nightmare. There's just not a lot of smooth surfaces. So it's really, really kind of problematic. We got 2 little things over here. The doves are a symbol of peace because in Bible stories, Noah, sends out a dove, and the dove comes back with an olive branch to show that there was land and that God had made peace with man. What this dove is on top of, over here, these things are called tree stones. And tree stones are, there was a thing going on in architecture and decoration called the Victorian rusticity movement. And so when you go to a park or something like that, and you see some of this cast iron furniture, it looks like twigs. That's part of that Victorian rusticity movement. And it's a good example of pretty much every decorative style eventually made its way into the cemetery. And cemeteries preserve things. A lot of things that may have been styles or architectural styles or decorative styles 150, 200 years ago, it's hard to find examples of them anymore because urban renewal and things getting torn down, but in the cemetery you can always find examples. The other thing that you'll find often associated with tree stones are monuments for a secret society called Woodmen of the World. Woodmen of the World was never a huge society, but as part of their membership, you got a tombstone. So that means you'll see a lot of Woodmen of the World tombstones, and because it was Woodmen of the World, they used a lot of tree stones. So that, I believe, concludes the first ever